When it comes to who owns Australia, the modern woke argument is that Aboriginal people, or the increasingly ubiquitous term First Nations people, were the original inhabitants and therefore are the rightful owners of the land. However, legally, historically, and in all practical terms in modern Australia, that holds no water. But to be truly woke, you have to unquestionably and slavishly spout the approved creed, the Acknowledgement of Country. As shown on the Reconciliation Australia website, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land. As many of you have pointed out, didn't this always used to be worded traditional custodians of the land? In just a few short years, Aboriginal people went from being custodians of Australia, that is, simply looking after the land, to being full-fledged owners. The irony is that traditional Aboriginal culture doesn't even view land as property. The belief was always that people belong to the land, not the other way round. But logic doesn't matter when there's an agenda to push. Thanks to an aggressive top-down adoption by corporations and government institutions, custodian is quietly being swapped out for owner. Not everyone has received the updated memo yet, of course. Anthony Albanese's personal website still sticks to the older script, acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land. Presumably, the politicians and their lawyers know that owner implies legal property rights, a can of worms the federal government isn't quite ready to open. Meanwhile, corporate giants like Woolworths are hedging their bets, stacking both terms together to cover all bases. We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country. Either way, it seems a promotion from caretaker to landlord only requires a few years of ideological peer pressure. Obviously, the idea that Australian Aboriginal people are somehow uniquely victims of land acquisition is a furphy. Name one piece of land on this earth that wasn't captured, fought over, or plundered. Even Japan, which is often cited as a country that was never colonised by the West, was built on extensive regional land grabs. Centuries of brutal internal warfare defined Japanese history, pitting rival warlords, provincial armies, and clashing clans against one another for territorial supremacy. The reality is that virtually no population on this planet occupies land that hasn't changed hands through force at some point in history. To suggest that one specific group holds a uniquely sacred, permanent right to a continent just because their ancestors happened to be there at that particular snapshot in history is simply not living in reality. Human history is fundamentally a timeline of conquest, displacement, and assimilation. To stay grounded in reality, when the British arrived in 1788, Australia wasn't a single unified nation, nor was it a homogeneous cooperative of Aboriginal people. There were hundreds of distinct clans speaking entirely different languages, many of whom weren't even aware of other tribes beyond their immediate neighbours. A Noongar person from Western Australia had zero connection to or awareness of a Gadigal person in Sydney. In a harsh land frequently starved of resources, there were inevitably intertribal battles, clashes over territory, and violent blood feuds. It certainly wasn't a peaceful utopia. To lump all Aboriginal people into one giant political entity simply because they occupied the same continent is absurd. It's like saying France and Russia share the exact same culture, identity, and national interests simply because they happen to sit on the same European landmass. Not to mention that the term First Nations is a direct import from Canada and is being used by modern activists to retroactively imply a unified sovereign political status that never actually existed in pre-colonial Australia. And lastly, how do the activists think they're making the rest of Australians feel by claiming that this land isn't ours, despite millions of us having lived here for generations and knowing no other home? It is a cruel thing to say to people that this isn't your land simply because you have the wrong bloodline. By that logic, we could open up some truly wild geopolitical cans of worms. Take the migration timeline. 65,000 years ago, there were no people in Australia. Where did the first inhabitants migrate from? They had to cross through the island chains of what we now call Indonesia. There was physically no other path. So following modern activist logic, shouldn't Jakarta be lodging a land claim? Imagine modern-day Indonesians protesting that Aboriginal people are just the descendants of an early migratory wave who overstayed their welcome tens of thousands of years ago, and that the land should be handed back to the rightful heirs in Java or Sumatra. It would make for some first-class political theatre, but instead of playing ridiculous games of ancestral real estate, we could just accept a basic modern reality. The land of modern-day Australia belongs to, and only belongs to, all Australians.